Hey everyone, this is Scott from certmedia.com, and today I'm going to be addressing a common question that I get in a bit of a run-on series, and it's, does X affect my website performance? A common misconception that a lot of people have is they think because a third-party service is loading with async that it doesn't slow down their website. And that can't be farther from the truth. So today's episode, I'm going to be going over, does AddThis slow down your website performance? And I'm going to talk about what you could probably do to assist to minify the impact of such a service, as well as offer you possible replacements. So to start off, we're going to just be using a default 2019 WordPress theme. There's no plugins activated except for WordPress Reset, which I've just disabled. There's no optimization done, and there are no server-side caching going on, as well as no CDN. And to benchmark it, we are going to go ahead and run it through GT Matrix, Kingdom Tools, and PageSpeed Insights. We will keep these scores until the end of the video, where we'll look at the before and after impact of AddThis. So currently it gets 100%, a 94, doesn't weigh much. It's a fairly blank slate. It's a good means of saying, what is the true impact? There we go. It scores basically perfect across the board. It's a very lean site. So to start, I've created myself a little AddThis account, and I am going to want to create some buttons. So we're just going to reload the page, and we're going to add a tool. And the most common tools that I see people use are the floating share buttons that are over here on the side, and the floating follow buttons at the top. I'll go ahead and add those, and I won't add anything else. So floating share buttons, I'll just use the recommended. 5 buttons seems reasonable. And to add this code, we're actually going to be adding a simple plugin that just injects the code onto the header called Insert Headers and Footers. It's written by WordPress Beginner, and you can simply install it and activate it. Now, the code they gave us is script type, yada, 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 source equals AddThis, and this is a default render blocking script, it looks like. So it looks like the script will impede the rendering of the website, but they do ask that it's placed in the footer. So we will simply use insert headers and footers and put it right before the closing body tag. And I'm just going to remove this HTML comment because it's just making this look lopsided. And now that we've added the code, we are going to be adding a additional tool. We're just going to make it follow buttons. And we're going to go and just add the common services. So and I'm just going to add like LinkedIn. And that should be it. We'll add a LinkedIn company page because that's the one people are most likely going to add. Okay, activate the tool. And I've made sure this JavaScript is here. So now we want to verify that the buttons are loading. We're going to just access this in incognito mode so that the admin bar isn't impeding it. Okay, we've added our AddThis buttons onto the site. Apparently I've gotten 136 Facebook shares because it's probably assuming it's from my certmedia.com domain. And now we're going to rerun the test. And we're going to duplicate all these pages, and we're just going to rerun the test as it is. Now, I'm not expecting this thing to do particularly well, but it shouldn't be a major slowdown depending on the weight of the service. So this says we got a 23-point reduction on PSI mobile. We still got 100 on PSI desktop, which is to be expected. A desktop cable connection will be quick regardless. We have added about 210 kilobytes to our total page size, along with 10 requests, and it drove up our fully loaded time by 0.8 seconds, which isn't that much. Something that's odd is it looks like it made a request that it then canceled. The scores don't matter too much, but it is something to keep in mind. And our pingdom score, again, shows our page size went way up, added a bunch of requests, and our load time was 685 milliseconds compared to 386 milliseconds. So the first thing that these services try to do is say, we'll just add an async tag. Async just means it's going to be non-render blocking. So while this could, in theory, help, I'm not going to be holding my breath for any improvement because it's already at the end of the document. But what we could do is modify the script and see if we can get it to load after the DOM event is ready. So we're just running this test after adding async. And something to keep in mind is your actual timing intervals. These are what the browser is going to be reporting. So our TTFB between the two tests are about the same. It's within the margin of error. But the onload event time nearly doubled, and our paint times were driven up a lot more as well. Adding the async attribute seems to have resolved our onload event time. It's now 0.9 seconds because async and defer both do two different things. If a tag is loaded asynchronously, the tag won't impede the rendering of the website until the entire script has been downloaded, and then it will execute. With defer, the asset will be downloaded, but it won't execute until after the onload event. So our page size is still a lot more than it originally was for 8 buttons. But our onload event time isn't much higher, and our TTFB is still within the margin of error. So let's see what happens if we add the defer attribute. Again, I shouldn't see any impact. And the only reason I'm using defer is because I wouldn't want the share buttons to impact the drawing of the website at all because they're not essential. They're just not essential data that needs to be shown to the user. And we're going to just verify that it's still indeed working even with the defer attribute, and it does load. And just to make sure, we're just going to come over here, and the script is indeed loaded with defer, and it's right in the footer. So nothing crazy. So we use the defer attribute. So the script is not loading. As you can see, it begins to download here, but the actual execution doesn't seem to be happening until here. And everything else is within its normal margin. This does make the paint time look a little higher, but this could just be an anomaly in the test, so we'll just run it one more time. But the site itself does load up quicker than it did initially, but you still managed to increase your page weight by 5 times and add a handful of more requests just for simple share buttons. And by adding the defer attribute here, our mobile score went up a lot more. The desktop score will just fluctuate because PageSpeed Insights isn't particularly reliable, but our paint time is still relatively quick, around the same points. The only thing that slowed down is our idle time because the CPU has to do a lot more work to first deal with all the redirects, but also to parse the JavaScript. The interactive time has increased by at least 2.2 seconds, and our input delay as 380 milliseconds when it was originally 40. And that was all to add simple share buttons and some follow buttons, which you could have easily done yourself with just a few lines of CSS or even slapping another plugin on there. So let's look at an alternative, because I'm not a fan of this. And to give it a bit of fairness, there's a lot of functionality built into AddThis: analytics tracking, share buttons, follow buttons, email newsletters, subscribers. It has a lot of functionality, but you have to really be using that functionality to make this worth the investment. As you can see, it has a very noticeable detriment to your page speed. Even though it's loaded with defer instead of the default render blocking fashion, it still impacts the CPU idle times. And loosely, CPU idle times do matter. If the mobile device has to wait and wait and wait because the main thread is being locked up by an excessive amount of JavaScript, it will impact the mobile performance of your website. The site may not load up, it may not be tappable or scrollable in that time, and it can cause a disjointed user experience. So we're now going to switch gears and use one of my, I would call it like an alternative. You have two real options that I like to use. I use either Genesis Simple Share, which is the most bare bones sharing plugin, or you can use Social Warfare. Social Warfare is a decent plugin. Its assets could be optimized by only loading when you need them, but it's not a bad plugin. It's really lightweight. So we're going to just hop over here and activate Social Warfare. And I'm just going to set this up like I normally would for any of my sites. I just always put Facebook first. I add mix.com. I never use share counts because from my experience, nobody cares ever. And I don't ever use the floating buttons either because, again, they're kind of annoying. I don't typically show them on my homepage, but because we're just trying to get a measurement of the performance impact, we're going to enable them. I'm going to click save, just so that way these are here. I'm going to go to the styles. Again, no floating share buttons, they're annoying. I could put them like on the right side, on the left side of the page, and then they would look like this. Let's give it a minute. Okay, it doesn't want to on the left side of the page. Oh, I know what I did. It should show up. Let me if I click over here. That option doesn't seem to be working at all. Maybe it's because I've disabled the floating share button option. Let's just see if I enable it, if it works. There we go. As you can see, completely ugly. But they're there. Social identity. I'm not going to bother filling this stuff in because it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to disable this Gutenberg block option just so it doesn't clutter my back end at any point. And okay, golden. We're going to leave it just like this. Now we're going to measure the performance impact of running Social Warfare. So it was 259 kilobytes, 18 requests, and 1.3 second fully loaded, which these were our total befores. This is with AddThis. Now let's see the impact of Social Warfare. And this is without optimizing asset delivery. Because they're on your server, you could do a lot more. So now it's 95.3 kilobytes. And this is 259 kilobytes for AddThis. And we only have 12 requests instead of 18. So this only adds 4 requests and about 50 or so kilobytes. And our waterfall is a lot prettier. It doesn't add a bunch of nonsense requests. It doesn't get delayed too much, and it loads a lot faster. And this could be optimized further. Let's just see Social Warfare's here. But to get a better idea, let's just see if it impacts maybe the blog posts separately. Maybe the blog posts get impact more, even though the assets should be loaded on every page. As you can see here, social warfare doesn't hide their assets from loading on any specific page. I'm expecting the blog page to be a little bit larger though, to compensate for that extra icon. So 108 kilobytes because of that Gravatar image. But even then, this is still a lot better option. Even with the addition of that Gravatar, we're still looking at a significantly smaller page. And we also have the comment reply JS and a few other post specific stuff loading. But it loads a lot quicker. It's not going to be, it's really just a better option. There's no reason in 2019 to be using a third-party share buttons. But let's take a step back and say we don't like social warfare, it's too bloated. If you think social warfare is too bloated, you can use the ultimate simple plugin, Genesis Simple Share. Genesis Simple Share really needs an update, but it's really, really small. It's, see if I can even find it. Well, really simple. This guy, it doesn't even load on. We don't have a Genesis theme, I believe, to actually use this. I'd have to download the Genesis framework, but if you're on the Genesis framework, it's considerably smaller. Just trying to see if it would load its assets. If I had the Genesis framework installed, you would see that this is still a much lighter option. But for any other theme, social warfare is several kilobytes smaller, 6 requests smaller, and even though the fully loaded times were about the same, that would just be an anomaly in the testing. As you can see, our interactive time was twice as high for some reason, which could have just been a matter of the asset delivery or the testing tool itself was having an anomaly. But it loads quick, and you're not using a third party, which makes it easier for your GDPR compliance. And if we just run all these tests again with social warfare enabled, as opposed to the pane that was AddThis, you're going to see a total timeline of what it's costing you to use your AddThis buttons. So again, you can ignore the fully loaded time because it's not going to take 2 seconds for this page to load. This icon file, for some weird reason, is like all the way down here. I think it's because I'm not declaring an icon file in the markup itself. But ignoring the anomaly, your page basically stops right here. Your timing intervals are completely messed up because of that icon for some weird reason. I have no idea what its conniption is. But let's look at our beginning. We started 100% with a 94, and our timing intervals look like this. Our waterfall look like that. Kingdom, 386, 46.18. It's basically just reconfirming what we saw here. Page speed insights was a 99 into 100. And then we added AddThis, which increased page weight by 5 times, added 6 requests, decimated our waterfall a little bit. And our timing intervals look like this after we optimized it by using defer instead of its default synchronous tag. It increased our pingdom time by another 200 milliseconds and added a bunch to the page size. And after we added the defer, our impact was a 92. But before we added the defer, it was down to a 73 by this simple addition of one tracking script. Using social warfare, our page weight only increased by 50 kilobytes. The waterfall still looks reasonable, except the inconsistency in server response time. Our timing intervals are all reasonable. Our pingdom looks reasonable again as well. Again, this is going to be an anomaly in the testing tool due to server location. But page weight, request count, its letter grade if you for some reason care about those. Our content size by content type is still really good, and our page speed insights, which this is without optimizing the asset delivery of social warfare, came out to be a 97 instead of the initial 73 of AddThis. So what's the TLDR here? Yes, AddThis severely impacts the performance of your website, especially for mobile users. There's not going to be a real way around it. You're adding a significant amount of JavaScript to your page and a significant amount of assets that are just not needed. It added 210 kilobytes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 110 kilobytes of compressed JavaScript and 344 kilobytes of uncompressed. That means the one JavaScript file that you're adding to your source, not including all the extra JavaScript that it loads, weighs more than the entire initial page weight of this website, which in turn ate up the main thread for the page speed insights test, and it severely impacted our rendering points, our render times, especially for mobile devices. And when you can use a free alternative such as social warfare, which may not be as easy to set up, is a much better overall option. We're basically getting the same grade with minor differences in the paint times for the mobile test, which could just be explained as an anomaly or asset delivery issue, but it's all really close. So keep this in mind. AddThis, not a good option. If you're on WordPress, try social warfare. Try Genesis Simple Share. If you're on any other platform, just write the code yourself. Share buttons are not hard. You can do it with a simple icon library like Font Awesome. It's not hard. And if you want a even lighter icon library, you could use Ionicons or any other font library, or just using small SVG files would be a better option. But I can't recommend that you use AddThis on your website because, as we've shown, it does impact your website performance. If you have any questions regarding the service, or if you're looking for alternatives for some of the other features you're using, you can feel free to comment in the section below, and I'll try to help you out. If not, you can go to my website. I do offer performance optimization services. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.